and welcome to the Introducing the Simulation webinar. I am Renee Marangwe, and this is our second webinar in the series, in the Professor series for the semester. Today we're going to be discussing how to get your students registered, and then we're also going to discuss introducing the simulation as well as the onboarding processes, how to get our students up and over the learning curve. We're going to be taking a look at the assignments, which we call the Getting Started activities. We're going to be taking a look at those assignments in detail. The first part of the webinar, we will discuss the agenda items, and then the second part of the webinar, the last 15 minutes or so, we're going to leave that open for questions. If you have any specific questions, you can send them to your CRC, or you can call us at 877-477-8787. You can also email your questions to support@capstone.com. Also want to notify you guys that this webinar is being recorded, so there's no need to take notes. And we will also be using Capstone for the webinar, and that's just because Capstone is our most popular simulation at the moment. However, the same process would also work for Foundation users. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with, how do my students register for the simulation? You want to direct your students to capstone.com, have them click on the red sign up button, click on the register now under students, and then they're going to land at the registration page. There's actually a video that will walk your students through this process. However, step one would be to agree to the terms of use, which basically states that I will not share my account information. I'm the only person that will be using this account. We're going to continue. Then the students will enter in the industry ID number. Remember, the industry ID number is a unique identifier that is generated after each course, after you create your course. So you want to supply your students with this industry ID so that the registration process is streamlined. I'm going to click Submit. And of course, we're now brought to a web form. We're just going to call this one Test. I will put in my email address here. I'm going to create a user ID. If you ever have a student ask, I don't know what my user ID is, that's because what we're doing right now is just creating our own user ID and password, creating our account, and then continue. The next screen is a payment screen. Your students have two options for payment. The first is to use a registration number. Registration codes would have been pre-purchased. This means that the simulation is not being paid for by the student, that either you as the professor or the university would have been administered these registration codes, and then you distribute them to your students. The next option is to pay by credit card, and that's pretty self-explanatory. So once your students have entered in or completed the registration process, they are now placed into your course online. So that's the first step to using the simulation, is to successfully register. Remember, provide your students with the industry ID or the registration codes if you have purchased them. Next, I want to show you guys this really useful tool or presentation. How do I get this question a lot? What's the best way to introduce the sim to my students? Well, if we click on the title of the course, go to Help and Support, Course Design, click on PowerPoint. That's going to bring us to a list of PowerPoints. The first one that I want to bring your attention to would be the Capstone Introduction. That's what we're going to take a look at today. This is a very helpful PowerPoint that can be used to introduce your students to the simulation. It's 29 slides. It will probably take about 30 minutes to go through. Of course, that just depends on your style of presentation. And don't forget to personalize this. Don't forget to edit slide 2. This will present your students, go into a little bit more detail than the video did. We're going to present your students with some background information about the company, talk a little bit about the segments, and then also we're going to give them some benchmarks, right? Industry is growing at 14%. You want to make sure that your sales are keeping up with the industry growth. And then we have some more detailed information about what is being done in each department. This is an excellent way to introduce the simulation. After they've got a proper introduction, now what you want to do is assign your students the getting started activities, which brings us to the third item on our agenda today. And now, to get access to the student side, we want to use this login to team feature. Click on any of our active teams. Now we want to click on the Getting Started link. Now the Getting Started activities, again, these are activities designed to get your students up and over the learning curve. The first activity is a video. This is a video, it's about 4.5 minutes, very short video. Again, kind of rehashing what we showed them in that presentation. Here's some background information. Here are the 4 departments. Then we talk a little bit about segmentation as well. The next item on the Getting Started tab is the guide. This is the student manual for the simulation. It comes in 2 formats. You have the PDF version. Print that out, and that's designed to be used as a reference document. You want to print it out whenever I'm making my decisions. I want to have my guide close by so that I can refer to it easily. Then there's also the online guide. The online guide is a larger, more thorough, searchable resource. I like to think of it as a Capstone Google. So if I can't find something in the PDF version, I'm then going to refer to the online guide. The next item is the industry conditions report. Remember, this report stays the same for all 8 rounds. It presents your students with market data that's necessary for making decisions in the simulation. We talk a little bit about segmentation, how the segments are drifting over time. Then we introduce them to the concept of ideal spots, where demand, that sweet spot, where demand is the highest. And then we also introduce students to the fabulous for the customer buying criteria, and it's broken down per segment. Again, I'll remind you that this information stays the same for all 8 rounds of the simulation. The next item under the Getting Started tab is the Rehearsal tutorial. I like to think of this one as kind of like riding a bike with training wheels. What we do is that we break the simulation down department by department, and we provide your students with instructions. All they need to do is just follow the instructions, and we also provide them with values to enter. They follow the instructions, enter in the values as directed, and observe the changes that are happening. Now, your students can play up to 4 rounds of this rehearsal tutorial. Only 1 round is actually required, and we only provide instructions for 1 round, the very first round. After completing 1 round, they should move on to the quiz. This is a 6-question quiz. Matching, you just need to match what actions are done in what department. One interesting thing about this quiz is that your students must get all answers correct on this quiz in order to be given full credit. And the quiz can be taken as many times as necessary. So if I get all questions correct on the first shot, I'm given 100. Second shot, 90. Third shot, 80, and so forth. And they can keep on going, but they must get all questions correct. After we've completed the first round of the tutorial as well as the quiz, we now need to click on Process. It will not let your students process that first round until they have successfully completed both one round as well as the quiz. Right, and that's our rehearsal. The next item on the Getting Started tab is the Capstone Courier. The Capstone Courier, we provide them with round 0 of the Capstone Courier. And this is just the starting status, starting information, what happened before. How do our companies look? How do our companies look when we're taking them over? And you'll notice that all the information is the same for all 8 rounds, or for all 6 companies. We will have another training or another webinar later on in the semester that will focus on how to make sense of the information provided in the Capstone Courier. If your students are running, or if you're running a foot race, then your students would need to join the company. However, if you're only running a tournament, your students may disregard the join the company option. Which brings us to our very last option, situation analysis. Now, the situation analysis is a collection of assignments that will dig deep into core concepts that are fundamental to the simulation. For example, understanding the perceptual map, understanding how our segments are drifting over time. And once we understand that, we can now move on to the ideal spots. How do we calculate the ideal spots? I want to point something out here. Notice that just the green fields here, they only need to fill in the green fields for around 0 and 1. And if they put in the correct answers, then all of the white cells are going to auto-populate. And that it works the same way for all of the activities in the situation analysis. The demand analysis, this is an activity centered around how do I forecast, how do I calculate the expected demand. Capacity, teaching us how to utilize our assets, making sure that we have enough capacity on hand to now meet the demand. The margin analysis, we'll talk about investments that we can make to keep our costs low and keep our contribution margins high. And then finally, the consumer report will go into detail on understanding whether or not we've built a good product. Are we meeting the customer buying criteria? Right? And that is the getting started section. Now, if you notice here on the student dashboard, click on dashboard. In the student dashboard, we've provided what I like to call the anchor tutorials. It's the quiz, the introductory lesson and quiz, the rehearsal tutorial, as well as the situation analysis. If you assign these 3 assignments, your students will be forced to look at some of those other reports. They'll be forced to download the guide and forced to look at the industry conditions report. All right, so those are our 3 agenda items for today. We talked about how do my students register. We looked at that introductory PowerPoint, and then I walked you through the getting started activity. How do my students get up and over the learning curve? So I just want to take a moment now to answer any questions. Go ahead and send your questions to me in the chat or the questions option. Either one of them will work. Okay, we have one question here. Do you have any worksheets or resources that I can use that walk through this process? Yes, we do. We have a Getting Started worksheet. If you need that worksheet, please reach out to your client relationship consultant or just send a request to support@capstone.com and we'd be happy to forward that over to you. Our next question, do I need for students to be assigned to teams before doing any of the assignments? No. Your students do not need to be assigned to teams. They only need to be registered for your course. They only need to complete the process that we looked at the beginning of the webinar, and that's it. After that, they will have access to all of the Getting Started tutorials necessary. Any other questions? Okay, here's one more. I'm in an online course. Can I send students the presentation? Yes, you may. That presentation, you can download that presentation, you can edit it, you can customize it, you can make it yours, and distribute to your students as you see fit. Okay, we'll give one more minute here to see if we have any other questions. Okay, well, just before we go, I want to show you guys how to register for future webinars. First, I want to thank you for attending the introducing the simulation webinar. And we've just added, I'll show you how to register for future ones. We've added this really cool option within the last week or so. If you click on the My Courses and come to your professor pages, you can click on Webinars. This will take you to the home page where you can register for future webinars, as well as watch previously recorded webinars. All right. And again, if you have any questions or concerns, you want more details about something that was discussed in today's webinar, you can send those questions to support@capstone.com or call us. Again, that number is 877-477-8787, and we're here from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. Again, I'm Renee Marangwe, Client Relationship Consultant here at Capstone, And I thank you all very much for attending our webinar today, and I hope that you guys all have a very good weekend. Thank you. Bye-bye.